All right, and welcome back to another session of The Mind Behind the Curtain. We're here with Umar, and today we're gonna talk about Canada Day. Happy Canada Day, everybody!
Happy Canada Day, everybody!
And let's get right into it, man.
Yeah, let's do it.
Let's talk about Canada Day and let's talk about
Celebrate
the
good times.
Come on. And let's give a little bit of history of what Canada is all about. I mean, I know Canada's got some bad history, man, and Canada's got a lot of struggle behind it. You know, but
it's
also
not all igloos and dog sleds, people.
Man, I'm gonna start off with that. Actually, one of my cousins, when we first started talking about moving up to Canada, my cousin was like, "Well, what are you gonna do up in Canada, man? It's all snow and ice, right? And you guys are gonna be living in igloos."
People really think this. Like, I was in Oakland, and they're like, "Do you guys have street lights?" I was like, "No, man, we don't have street lights. We're getting them soon, though, man. We're getting them soon." "Oh, I'm good for you, baby. I'm rooting for you. I hope it comes through soon." I'm like, "Do you really think we don't have street lights?
No.
And we live in igloos?" And
I know. Especially like back in like the early 80s when people didn't even hear about Canada. They didn't even know that Canada was on the map. They were like, "Oh, Canada? What?" And I also had another thing that one of my uncles, he said, he goes, "Well, you know what? Now you're gonna be moving out into like the garden of this continent." And I was like, "What do you mean the garden of this continent?" Because he was giving me some light, right? He was like, "It's not all that bad." And I said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, if you look at the continent like a house, right? You got America, who is the house."
Oh, I see. Right. Of course, America's the house.
And you got Canada as the garden, right?
Oh, the garden.
And Mexico being the driveway.
My God!
All right, so we got all the exhaust and the carbon dioxide and the oil spills. And shit.
Oh man!
All right. But man, let me tell you.
I mean, we are a garden. Don't get us wrong. A lot of Canada, especially where we're from, British Columbia, is considered rainforest.
Oh yeah.
People don't realize that you don't have to go to the Amazon. We got rainforest right here.
That's right. That's
why everything's so green and lush and plush.
Thousands of trees.
Yeah.
And you go over like we'll be talking about where you can go and visit in our next part 2 of this podcast.
Yes.
But yeah, the demonstration forest, man. You can get some fresh air, like fresh oxygen, man. And let's get right into the culture, man.
The culture, the history, like we're going back.
Yeah, let's get.
You want to go way back?
I mean, yeah, let's take it from the beginning.
Okay, let's take it from the beginning, people. There's much controversy out there, but a common belief in the internet society is that there was an indigenous religion to the Native Americans.
Right. Because the natives were here first before any other settlers, right?
Right, and their religion was Wankantanka.
That was the spirit, the great spirit.
The great spirit. Right. They believed in
Wankantanka,
the cosmos. They believed in
the stars.
In the stars.
Yeah, that's right.
They did, right. and that's fantastic. Quite frankly, that's wonderful. But then, of course,
it was a very omonistic religion.
Yes, very omonistic, and. For those of you who don't know what that means out there, I'm one of them, but very ominous. It's based off ominous. And so, when the settlers came, they're like, "Oh no, that's not going to do. Here's this wonderful Christianity. We're not going to go too much into that." And then so, a lot of the natives welcomed it with open arms, and they accepted the Christianity. Right. And those are the ones that are the descendants of the people in this country, because the rest, they didn't make it, folks.
They didn't make it.
They didn't. They did a little cleansing if you didn't join, but that's another episode. And but that's the history. That's part of the history of Canada, and we got to recognize that unfortunately a lot of Native Americans lost their lives because they wouldn't convert. But I'm not going to go too much into that.
I mean, there were many reasons why they lost. How many Native lives were lost?
Yes, of course.
Over territory
yes.
and over and Canada, has a history of many wars, right? And going back to like how the settlers came into Canada, one of the first settlers that came in, who was an explorer, was Giovanni Codoro or something like that. I think I'm pronouncing it right. I think I wrote it down here somewhere. But Giovanni he was the one that came through Newfoundland and he explored. He was an Italian explorer.
After the Vikings, of course.
Actually, Vikings were first.
The Vikings were first.
Yeah, they came in, they checked it out.
It was so long ago that they were able to just tiptoe from Iceland across into Canada using no boats, folks. They just sort of walked in. I'm kidding. Of course, I'm kidding. But they took those Viking boats.
Dragons.
Can you imagine on the open sea, on those Viking boats, destined, we're going to make it or we're going to... And they found Canada. It's unbelievable what they did with those small boats. They were true sailors.
They were pretty solid.
They're pretty solid.
Pretty solid.
Don't you have some Viking in you?
I do,
That's another episode.
That's another episode. My teeth and how my dentist figured out that I had some.
And I think I have them too. There's something in the jaw.
Fangs.
The eye fangs inside your mouth, folks. If you have these two little things, I'm not going to show you because that's definitely not what you want to see. It's a Viking trademark.
It's a Viking trademark.
That's unbelievable.
So going back to Giovanni Cabot. He was the first one to land on this side of the continent or on this side of North America, and right after that, the French and the Spanish, the Portuguese came over. The French were the ones that actually realized that there was money to be made.
Right. And while we're talking about the French, I'm going to jump in here for a second.
Go ahead.
It's one of the facts that I got is that if there's some debate about maple syrup. I believe that the Native Americans were here for a long time, so they probably figured it out first. But there's some debate on who boiled down the first sap to make maple syrup.
Right.
But one of the fun facts about maple syrup that I didn't realize until I did some research is that they used it as a marinade.
Like a barbecue
thing. They
Oh.
soaked the meat in the maple syrup.
Makes sense.
And flavored the meat for their,
well, to this day, you got like the salmon maple syrup and all that.
Oh yes, of course we know now, but I'm just saying.
Back then,
we put it on pancakes and some sauce. Maybe well, I guess your bacon or your sausage. I like to dip it in myself.
Oh man, maple syrup and bacon. Oh, that's
and if you, by the way, folks,
bacon
true Canadian maple syrup is what you want. There's lots of syrups out there, and there's lots of fine products, but if it doesn't have that Canadian leaf, it's not really.
And you know it's not.
I'm sorry, folks.
We want you to buy Canadian.
Buy Canadian. Be proud. We're proud to be Canadian. That's what we're going to talk about in a little bit. Let's go on the history.
So then we got going back to the French and all that, and how the French came in. They saw that there was money to be made with the beaver pelts. Beaver fur, man.
And as much as
the beaver made a lot of people rich.
It's animal rights, and we're losing lots of species. But back then, that was a way of life.
That was the way, and fur was a big thing, man.
Fur trade was a huge trade.
The British came in, and then the British realized that there was money to be made on that. On that, there was a guy who opened up the Hudson Bay Company. The Hudson Bay Company, man, Pierre Madison, right? And basically, they were the first corporation, like as we know now, right? The first corporation to actually take over a nation. And
they found this country.
They found this country. They were known as the peoples of Canada.
They really were. And we should talk about, it's another touchy subject, but part of the history, it's the trading of Redskins. And it's another very sensitive. I have some Native in me, and it's
and that's what we're talking about.
All lives matter. There's a lot of the Black Lives Matter and a lot of things going on. I'm part Black, but all lives matter, and there's so many people that have suffered, and the Redskin thing is a pretty horrible
when you put it in this context,
history.
Of course, all lives matter.
Right.
Because you can't. I mean, you can't choose a timeline to define when a life should matter.
Right.
You know what I mean? But sure enough, nowadays
it's trendy, so we're gonna go with this time. That's ridiculous. That sounded wrong, folks. I'm not trying to say
there's still people suffering.
By any means, but I have a problem with it. And the Redskin is a perfect example of how they traded. If you don't know, do your history. I don't want to talk about it too much. They were killing the natives, and after they killed them, they took part of their scalp with their hair that they never cut their whole lives, and it was traded as value. It was traded like a beaver pelts or like a
so you would say because way that I interpret that is that whenever I saw like a Western you always saw the natives cutting off the scalps of their...
Isn't that interesting?
I know. So it's kind of like reversed.
It's
like
reversed.
They kind of switched it. Maybe the natives never did it.
I haven't done my research, so I'm not sure if history's just trying to say, oh, hey, you did it to us first.
Yeah,
so that's why we're doing it to you.
Yeah, that's what we should look into.
That's something we have to do some research on, but it was both done both ways. Yeah. But there was nobody buying white man's scalps.
Right, no. Native hair is amazing.
Why was everybody buying white man's scalps?
Maybe it wasn't trendy.
Wouldn't it be worth 10 to 1?
Right? But back then there was a lot of wigs to be made in Britain and Europe. Like everybody
for the hair. Oh, I never even thought about that.
So maybe that's how they got the wigs.
Do you think it was
I'm pretty sure.
The desecration of the people and
hanging
them in the storefront, seeing those hanging in the storefront next to the pelts must have just drove you crazy.
Right? Just crazy shit. So that's one of the bad things that the history of Canada has, right? And now let's move on to some of the good stuff, like the culture, okay, so Canada went through all these wars and all these conflicts and fighting for territory, fighting for beaver pelts and other types of fur, and then the creation of maple syrup. Then we started nationalizing a lot of things, and later on into the future and the evolution of Canada, like hockey. Beer, poutine,
baby.
Right?
We were on the map until we created poutine, right?
And the raccoon hats and all that.
Oh, they're coonskin.
The coonskin. Yeah.
The coonskin. The coonskin hat is a beautiful, lovely hat. But when you really think about it, it's a raccoon, man.
That's a raccoon just sitting on your head.
You know what I mean? It's like Black Lives Matter, raccoon lives matter too, man. Yo, why do you think we got fingers, man? Bang, bang, we're coming for you, man. See me? I mean, you're garbage. Ain't nothing you can do, because I'm a raccoon and you can't kill me no more.
This is for my people.
This is for my people. Power to the raccoon people.
Power to the raccoons,
no, I'm kidding. But seriously, that is... Yeah. Those hats are so... I've loved those hats growing up. I love those shows, what they represented. Yeah. Lewis and Clark and just adventure. You got a freaking raccoon on your head. Like it's just horrible when I think about it. How beautiful and disgusting at the same time.
And that's the thing. That's whenever you think of Canada, you think of those things, right? You think of the poutine, the hockey, the beer, the raccoon stuff.
Let's do that right now. What you got? What you got when you think of one or two words?
We're gonna do a word association.
Yeah.
We're gonna do a game and see what happens. So whenever you say Canada.
Yeah, I'm gonna go back to what we just did because coonskin. I know we didn't have that on his list, so coonskin. I think of that hat. So what you got?
I think lumberjacks.
Oh, I had that on. That's a good one. Moccasin.
Moccasins. Oh yeah.
Very traditional native slipper. It's very popular. I mean, when you got as a kid, I don't want those. Oh, moccasins. No, I want those. Again, oh my God. What is a moccasin?
They were made out of leather.
What is it made? No, it's made of an animal because it's reversed. That's right. Yeah. The skin was on the outside and that fluffy fur.
Like a deer or something like that.
Again, it's just.
Talking about shoe wear, I think of Birkenstocks. Like the Birkenstocks and the socks from the Roots.
Is it just the Birkenstocks or is the Birkenstocks and the khaki shorts? Is that a combo that has to go together?
I remember that.
With or without socks? Is that Canadian look?
Yeah.
With socks, I hate to say it.
Gray socks.
With socks, that's the Canadian look right there. What else you got?
I think of totem poles.
Totem poles, nice. I'm going to keep on that line with the igloo.
Oh, yeah. Igloos is 100%.
You got to go with the igloo. All right. Bears, of course, bears.
Yeah,
we got Canada, you think of bears.
Sightseeing and sightseeing the great mountains and all the beautiful sceneries we got. So I think mountains.
This is on the food list, but this is a surprising candidate for Canada to call its own.
Yeah.
Sushi.
Sushi?
And I say that because the Japanese admit
there's history
that the Canadian seafood is so amazing that the sushi here in Canada in Vancouver specifically, is some of the best in the world. Yes.
And that leads into a little part of the history too. So back in World War I, when there was a conflict between Japan and all that stuff, and all the war between
World War II, sorry, Japan.
World War II. The conflict between Japan and America and all this stuff. The Canadians actually gathered all the Japanese and put them in concentration camps. Now that being said, some of these concentration camps weren't as evil or malevolent as like previous.
Yes, what was going on in Europe? There was
none of that. I mean, these guys got like beautiful like cabins out in past Whistler.
Hang on. I got some history for you there on direct correlation to my family. Yeah. They weren't just Japanese in those camps. They were German. And my grandmother is German and Russian. And her brothers were put into those camps in Pemberton. Right. And they were shells. The conditions were horrible. They were makeshift shells with a wood stove in the middle, with a big space between the board and the roof, and the heat would literally. So many people died of malnutrition and pneumonia.
Oh, Jesus.
Because they just didn't have the conditions, and they did. I mean, they weren't inhumane. I mean, I don't know. I wasn't there. I can't speak.
Yeah, we can't.
What I've been told, the generalization, what I saw online, and what my family has told me, and all three of her brothers died.
Oh no.
Like that's a huge part of the family gone.
They were moved out like pretty remotely out there. Like they were past Whistler. Like my family from the Rockhill side, they had some cabins up in McGilvery Falls.
Okay.
And those were what I found out they were owned by Japanese Japanese. They were Japanese concentration camps where they were sent out to like just leave the city and make sure they don't
basically get them out. I feel like they didn't want them floating around in society and people.
Exactly.
I think that was
and when we got there, we saw some of their old technology. Like they had some generation engines and or
generators.
They had some generators that were like by the rivers and by the waterfalls, and they must have lived pretty good. And we saw some pictures too, man. And the houses look great.
Oh, I'm sure there was good places and bad places,
and that's the thing, right? Like it all depends on how these people coexisted and how they were treated. But I want to believe that Canada wasn't as inhumane, but like you said, your story.
We're talking about the history in the beginning. How did we start out?
Yeah, the bad versus the good of the Canadian history, man. And this is all good. This is all good.
This is what we're talking about with society. People are talking about right now with all these movements and all these things that are going on, but it's throughout our history. Mixed in with the history is the atrocities that we've done to the conquered people. Yeah. History is his story, folks. It's not history. It's the conqueror's version of what happened.
That's right.
And unfortunately, these are not some fun facts.
No, and at the end of the day, we are here to like kind of debunk all the misinformation about Canada and also enlighten some people on what the history was all about. I mean, obviously, no country has like a clean record of how they were built or how the civilization was created and how it brought us to this point.
We might be the best example, and look at our history.
Yeah.
Canada might be one of the best examples in the world, and we still did this.
I think Canada is like number 2 or number 3 of the best countries in the world.
Now, we should say that these are not governing citizens of Canada that were committing these atrocities. They were just being done to the Canadian citizen who was not yet a Canadian. And I believe you can tell us what Canada means.
Well, that's the thing. Canada comes from a native word that means settlement. And back in the day, Canada didn't even have provinces. It had territories. Yes. And now Canada has 10 provinces and 3 territories.
Do you know what the native word for Canuck is?
What's the native word for Canuck?
The native word for Canuck is he who eats poutine.
No, are you kidding?
I'm not kidding. He who eats poutine is the native word for Canuck. No kidding.
Oh my
God.
I was like, they were making some fries with some mozzarella cheese back in the day. I'm like trying to play it in my mind.
Where'd they get these cheese curds from, man? This is a long time ago.
They invented gravy? Where did they get the gravy, man?
From the maple syrup, man.
Yeah, they made it with maple syrup. Well, that also brings up going back to like the history of the Klondike Gold Rush and all that stuff. Like,
we got some good history too, folks. We really do have some great history. I mean, again, though, but there was some trouble. I mean, throughout the history, every single event in history, it has the scale, and it's just like on one side you can just list off the accomplishments like we're at the Oscars, and on the other side it's 2020 and it's the worst atrocity.
At the end of the day, we can agree that it's all about money and territory, right? Yeah. And we are right now we're still under like the laws of the British. I mean, a lot of people may say, no, Alex, you're wrong, but this is why we call it crown, like crown land, and that's why when you have something to deal with in terms of something legal, or you got to go to court, you got to deal with the crown. Like it's all about the crown, and that's how the British technically took over the French. they declared this as crown land, and they wanted to take over these territories.
Right.
And then with the help of the Americans and all these people, they and some.
I've seen Mel Gibson, The Patriot. I know the history. I've seen my movies. I know.
They basically started defining Canada, and they drew this line, across Canada and United States, and said, okay, set up your provinces, right? And that's
the militia. The militia.
Yeah.
Helped found the British dynasty.
I know, isn't that crazy?
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. And then they
sorry, help push back the British out of America.
But they
the militia.
In the States.
Otherwise,
they
North
which
America
the history. I mean, we might do a 4th of July special.
Oh,
we might do it. So the way that Canada got its wealth, and this is what I kind of chronologically aligned, was that the settlers came in, they found a bunch of fur, beaver made them rich. Like we continue.
Is there a higher commodity than beaver? I don't think so.
Beaver is the best
beaver
way to get rich.
It's gold. And there's beaver.
It's right there. And then sure enough, gold came after the beaver trade, the beaver pelt trade, and then you had the logging, right?
Right.
And then you had other resources, and then you went into like.
Some could say the beaver trade led to the gold rush.
And that's what I'm saying. It definitely led to the gold rush. It was the gold back in the day, man.
It was.
And so that's what that's how I see how this country flourished.
Another big part of Canada that we don't really have time to go into today, of course, is the railroad. The railroad founded this country.
Set up by the British.
Set up and built by the minorities of this country.
Yeah, that's when they brought a bunch of Chinese immigrants to work on that railroad. Mm-hmm. They brought about East Indians following after that, and the
blacks, of course, were already here. We slipped in.
They're like, hey, man. They started joining the workforce.
We did.
Yeah. And
my grandfather was a porter on the trains when he was a young man.
No way. Well, yeah, you probably have a lot of like stories, man, because you are a 3rd generation Canadian.
I'm a 4th generation Canadian on my mom's side.
Yeah.
On my dad's side, I believe I'm a 3rd generation Canadian. Yeah.
Nice.
So we got a lot of history, and my grandmother is a Medal of Canada winner or Order of Canada winner.
Right. That's awesome.
So our family's very proud.
Yeah.
And we love you, Grandma.
Awesome.
He set the bar a little high. The rest of us
She's
are kind of.
Why'd you have to be an Olympian?
Damn, woman, she won the gold medal and the world record at the same time.
It's
like, how do you follow that? But no, I'm kidding. We are so proud. We love her tremendously, and we're proud, so proud to be Canadian. Yeah. I wanted to talk a little bit about what Canada means to you, because.
Well, I was born. We can close this whole episode with this.
Okay, I was born in this country.
Yeah.
And there's so many things that people spend their whole lives to get here for the opportunities that are in this country. And it's like you come here to train to ski at Cyprus, and I live at Cyprus, and I live on the mountain, and I'm never up there. Yeah. And every day you're like, you coming up? I'm like, maybe tomorrow. I'm gonna go to the gym and run around in the closet.
Well, that's what's gonna lead us into like part 2 of this. It's
episode. Like we don't take advantage of the things in this country, and there's so much to offer, and this is an amazing country. Yeah. What does it mean to be Canadian to you? What does it mean?
Oh man, well, when I first came to Canada, I was very patriotic towards my native land, which was Mexico, right? And I was very Mexican, and that's one thing that I always thought about: when does a Mexican become patriotic? Right? Does it become patriotic on his first birthday, on his second birthday? Mm-hmm. But I felt like by the time I was 5 years old, the Mexican culture, which is very strong, was already bestowed upon me. It was already bestowed in me. And so coming here, I was carrying the traditional parties and the traditional holidays that we had in Mexico. All the food, all the music, the folklore of Mexico, not only that, but the mystery and all this things that now here as North Americans, we kind of have adopted, like Cinco de Mayo,
right.
The Day of the Dead, and all that stuff. So when I first came here, I hated it. I hated it, man. And I hated it because there was no flavor in the food. There was no flavor of the food, man. And
my goodness. I can't even imagine what that must have been like for you.
We found one Mexican restaurant, which was on Denman, and the cook was Chinese, which he's still here. The guy's still alive, and he's still cooking at a little restaurant just over here in New West.
Okay.
And
but was it good?
Man, it had no flavor.
Oh, okay.
It was like Fisher Price Mexican food. It was like
so it had no flavor, but somehow you're tracking this man's career and you still know where he cooks.
no, he's still there.
You just go for sentimental reasons. I feel like a bad meal. I'm going to go have some of that bland food.
And the funny
thing reminds me when I first get out of this country.
The waiter that
very
introduced us
Canadian,
to
by
that
the way,
restaurant,
that.
he took him there and he took that little restaurant. He took the chef. He's like, I'm gonna open a restaurant and take the chef with me.
Nice.
But what I learned was that in terms of the food was that the food was catered to the North American palate,
of course,
right? Because it was too overwhelming. Now things have changed completely,
right?
But but like you said, I started looking at all the good things about Canada. Right. I started focusing on all the good things, not the bad things about it, like the food, the cold, the rain, like all this stuff. Like,
were you expecting a lot of white people?
Well, obviously, I was expecting like.
To
not see Mexicans. To not see
America
Latinos.
Junior?
No. What I thought of Canada was that it was filled with Eskimos. So I felt like
literally you thought it was the igloo and like, oh my goodness.
I thought I was going to see a bunch of native people, and maybe some guys with like lumberjack outfits. And
you must have got off the plane like, oh, thank goodness.
Plus, my stepdad, rest in peace, and I love him. He was like 6'3", he was a big burly man, beard. Like he was the typical lumberjack, right?
Lumberjack.
Yeah, man.
Oh.
So, but what I'm saying is that I started seeing all the great things about Canada, man. And I started getting myself involved in all the things that made Canada, the culture. I tried hockey, didn't really like it that much, but I tried skiing and fell in love with skiing, man. I love the mountain.
Curling. I can't get enough.
Man.
I'm kidding. I've never curled. I'd love to curl.
Man,
anybody wants to go curling, I'm down to try curling.
I love watching women's curling, by the way. Oh my God. And it just, you turn that volume up and you just hear them like excite your senses, the way they yell like hard, sweep, and you're just like, yeah, girl.
I watched women's NFL, we'll call it, except they were like in lingerie, which was, but they had pads. Yeah. And they hadn't got a play-by-play guy yet, so they just went with the live feed for the sound, and that was a bad idea. Women are hard.
Yeah,
hardcore. I'm gonna kill you. I'm gonna rip off your head, and I leave the rest of it out. I was like, damn, like
even worse than men.
Even worse than men. 10 times worse than men.
Yeah,
and they could play too.
That's right. So I discovered all these things. Obviously, I started playing soccer. I finally, after about a year or two, I started understanding the Canadian humor.
Did you have to take the test?
Well, when I became Canadian, I did. After 3 years of living here, in order to become Canadian, I had to do the test and all that. And,
is there an age that children are exempt?
I don't know, man. I don't know. But
how old were you? Sorry.
How old was I? It must have been like in 86. So it was 86, just around Expo.
Okay.
When Expo, and that's another thing. I got to witness Expo, man. And that's the other thing that made me feel more comfortable, because I started seeing Canada as a multicultural country, right?
Oh, yes.
And I started seeing all this, like, people from all different ethnicities, and I started, man, and by the way, the women, women in Canada, the women in BC, gorgeous.
What does Canada mean to me in one word? Diversity.
Diversity. Yeah.
It's like, it's a shining symbol of what the world could be.
Yeah.
If it was done right.
All right.
If everybody was, I mean, I get it. We just watched this thing on Bali the other day, and the lady was saying, I just want to preserve my culture for my people and for anybody who comes to this country, and I can appreciate that. But at the same time, we're all human, and we're all from the planet Earth. And it's like,
that's right. And that's one thing that Canada teaches you.
And Canada teaches you that you can have problems with your neighbor across the world, and then you come to Canada and they're your neighbor again, and all of a sudden there's no problems.
That's right.
So I really feel like this is like the test ground for what future humanity and what we could be.
You fast forward with everything that we could say about Canada, and you look at how we are today after this pandemic and everything, and we're doing pretty good. We're doing way better than any other countries. Yeah, it's not all good.
I mean, it helps that you got like a lot of arm space between the people with the population and the size of the land.
And the help from the government, the government stepping up, giving the CERB, giving all these allowances. Plus, we were never really restricted to our homes. Like they told us, you can go out, you can go and enjoy your walk. And obviously people were afraid to go out. And now it's dawning on them that maybe they could have just taken a couple of hours to go out jogging. Yes, they closed up a lot of the fields, but you could still go out. In other countries, they wouldn't even let you out like 2 meters away from your house.
But that again, that's population and that's the density of size of land.
But here we were more relaxed, But yet a lot of us followed the rules, and
that's why it worked, because everybody followed the rule.
And that's the
thing. Kept their space. Take a wide berth. It's not. It's 101 stuff.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I always viewed Canada as being a Canada with well-educated people. You know, the majority that are very
I agree with that,
well-educated.
sure.
Their education here, okay, sure. There's a lot of things that I can disagree with, but in majority, it's good. It's really good, and it's better than any other places around the world.
Yes.
You know, but yeah, in a nutshell, good versus bad. What would you say, like out of 10? What Canada? Does Canada have more of the bad or more of the good?
Oh, I mean,
would you say like?
I'm an overthinker, so that's a horrible question to ask me.
Do you think the scale is more like good?
It's good. Oh yeah, for sure, it's good with the healthcare and just the way that we treat each other and respect each other and the forms that we have and the diversity that we have and
a lot of people are living good
and the embracing of the multiculturalism.
That's right.
It's really great, but at the same time, there's a lot of room for improvement.
Yeah,
and
like anything else,
like. Racism is something that I don't really like talking about, but I will say that I find that a lot of times that racism isn't really racism and it's just anger, and you just overreact. And there's a brown guy and there's an Asian guy, and they're calling each other names before they start fighting over a parking space, and we
can get into that, and we'll do another segment based on that.
You know what I mean?
Has racism made a comeback?
It doesn't make any sense.
No,
it doesn't make any sense.
All right.
Racism knows no race or creed, but Canada, I love Canada.
Yeah, we gotta wrap it up.
Way long here, sorry.
And thank you for listening, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed it. We're gonna do a part 2. We just gotta stop.
Happy Canada Day!
Happy Canada Day, people!
We love you.
Stay positive.
See you later.